He's been the one that's taken care of. I was busy for
They're obviously not that bad.
Good morning again. Hey, high schoolers, please do me a favor. This is kind of a public ceremony. Understand this is being broadcast out on YouTube today too as kind of a permanent record. So please do your absolute best and be great. Please keep your masks up and cell phones away and we'll get started. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Veterans so many offer. That was a veteran. Veterans so much because they fought for our country and national country. Veterans because they have risked their lives for our country. Veterans because they died for our country and they fight for our freedom. We honor our veterans with great. Say the pledge to honor our veterans. We honor our veterans by hanging up the flag outside. So it means to me to be able to express your ideas and to be able to just do whatever instead of keeping everything to yourself. Freedom means a lot to me.
As president of Haxtun's National Honor Society, I would like to welcome you to this year's Veterans Day Assembly. The color guard will now post the colors. They will be followed by the Haxtun band playing the national anthem. those who have served honorably in military in wartime or peacetime. In fact, Veterans Day is largely intended to thank living veterans for their service, to acknowledge that their contributions to our national security are appreciated, and to underscore the fact that all those who served, not only those who died, have sacrificed and done their duty for our country. Speaker is a Family Veteran Service Officer. Please welcome Stephen Fern and hold any questions until the end.
Thank you for having me today. You know, one of the tricks of the speaker is when he gets up in front, he's nervous and he's going to look out and he's going to see friendly faces in the crowd, right? Not so much today, because the masks hide your identities. I'm the Veteran Service Officer for Phillips County. The state of Colorado provides funds for service officer in every county, and the county commissioners then distribute this money to the service officer to reach training and to work with veterans. Your commissioners are very supportive of this mission, and they help as much as possible, and I appreciate their trust. I deal mostly with disability and pension claims and help as much as possible with medical claims. All claims are passed through the Veterans Administration, or the VA for short. It is an honor to work with veterans and to hear their stories. My military career began with basic training at Fort Knox, Kentucky in the summer of 1970. Classes and weekend training at CSU junior and senior years 1772. Advanced individual training at Fort Lewis, Washington, summer of 71. Transportation Officer Basic Course, Fort Eustis, Virginia, 1972. My first active duty assignment was Property Book and Transportation Officer for Combat Developments Command, Fort Belvoir, Virginia, 73-74. I also had oversight of 10 drivers and vehicles used by personnel at Combat Developments Command. I ended my enlistment by spending 10 months at the Alcohol and Drug Control Office at Fort Belvoir, Virginia. I was never stationed overseas, but traveled through much of the United States. Some things I learned in the military were this: respect everyone, give respect, and you'll get respect. You are tougher than you think, mentally and physically. Be blind to race and gender. You will soon know enough. You will know soon enough if an individual will earn your trust. When I was in basic training at Fort Knox, there was this guy named Edward Balco, a tall, very thin, not very athletic looking individual. I didn't know him well. He was in another squad. You know, he just didn't stand out. Well, Balco got a rash. It was hot and humid in Kentucky in July. Not a little rash, but one that covered most of his body. Yeah, everywhere on his body. He went on sick call, and they wanted to keep him out of training for a few days. He wasn't having any of that. He just loaded up on powders and lotions. He was covered head to toe. He was miserable, but didn't miss one day of training. That took some strength and courage. Basic training was 50 years ago this past summer, and I've never forgotten his name. Courage, strength, perseverance equals leadership. It is dangerous to prejudge. Another valuable lesson was to move seamlessly from leader to follower and back again, always being ready to lead. A good supporting follower is of great value. The follower does not have to get into the background, have nothing to do. If you just be there when you're supposed to be, and if you have suggestions, make them in the tone that you want for the betterment of the mission. This translates better than you might believe into civilian life. We have a saying: lead, follow, or get out of the way. Today, the military is all volunteer, meaning everyone in the service has signed up on their own. And they are selected, not everyone gets in. The draft is when you can be called to service against your will. The draft has been put to use during World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. I can't tell you how having the possibility of being drafted can change your life. Everyone joining the military will take the following oath. I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I will obey the orders of the President of the United States and the orders of the officers appointed over me, according to the regulations and the Uniform Code of Military Justice, so help me God. This oath gives the military a blank check to use you, up to and include risking your life. I thought it would be interesting being at this time in our nation. When I looked at this, I also found the presidential oath. Our president will take this oath. I do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of the President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. There's nothing more to be said about the President. He doesn't need any statements about who is answering to except the people. To be called a veteran, a military member must have completed his duty and time in service. I deal with service records that starts with a VA discharge form called the DD-214, which details time in service and, more importantly, details the character of that service. Every veteran in possession of a DD-214 stating an honorable discharge can be proud of their service, and it should be a source of pride. The DD-214 also tells of training, location served, and honors earned. It is an amazing document with so much meaning to a veteran. Phillips County veterans have served in countries all over the world and have performed admirably in all aspects of military service, including infantry, artillery, airborne, supply, transportation, ordnance, medical, food service, nursing, intelligence, armor, aviation, heavy equipment operator, to name a few. It takes all of these and more to accomplish the goal of providing security for our nation. I bet every veteran can recall times when they look back and said, you know, I just can't believe I did that. Veterans also learn about being away from home. If your duty is not allowed, you will miss birthdays, Thanksgiving, Christmases, family, children, and spouses. So what have veterans done to you? You folks are very lucky these days with your computers. I would urge you to Google United States military casualties, and you will get a list of all military wars and skirmishes of the United States since 1776. You will find that 660,000 service members have died in combat, and another 673,000 have died in support of combat troops, and another 1,500,000 have been wounded. Many of those wounded have lifelong battles with physical and mental disabilities. The death toll of 1,333,000. The wounded total 673,000. The military can be a dangerous place to train and live. When being around vehicles, tanks, helicopters, guns, etc. It is only because of discipline and leadership that keeps the safety record as good as it is. All this sort of puts the cost of freedom in perspective, doesn't it? If you want to learn more, Google Veterans Memorials in Washington, D.C. Unbelievably, there's now no World War I memorial. But I believe that is going to be changed in the near future. Too bad none of the World War I vets will ever see it. 116,000 deaths in World War I, 204,000 wounded. This may impact definitely from the point of a veteran. When you walk up to the World War II Memorial, you'll see a wall of stars that represent 406,000 deaths. You need to take a minute and think about it. Another 670,000 wounded. Each of the stars on that wall represents 100 killed. And that's a long, big wall. The Korean Memorial portrays the combat patrol and oversized statues, and when you look at them, you will be cold, wet, and tired right along with them. Korean War, 36,516 deaths, 92,134 wounded. The Vietnam Memorial puts names to 558,479 killed in the war, including Jim Peter from Haxtun and Charles Harmon from Plymouth. 150,000 wounded. We're still very involved with Vietnam vets at the VA. When you walk up to the Vietnam Hall, the names are engraved into the surface. And so if you take a piece of paper like you do your crayon or your pencil to trace on something, you can make a tracing of that name. This is an original tracing of Jim Credo's name on the wall. He was a family friend and my brother's very close friend. It puts really a name to the cost. One of the most emotional is the Vietnam Women's Memorial next to the Vietnam Memorial. It depicts 3 women, most likely nurses. One is holding a wounded soldier. One is looking to the sky as if looking for an incoming rescue helicopter. And another is kneeling as if praying. 265,000 women served in Vietnam. About 18% of military today are women serving in most, if not all, specialties. The last memorial I wish to talk about is a moving memorial that was displayed at the Sturgis motorcycle rally this summer. This memorial had stands that stood about 6 foot tall. Each one of them had 3 veins on it sticking out like this. And on those veins were names, ranks, and pictures of those that have died in the War on Terror since the World Trade Center disaster in 2001. There are 4,700 deaths so far in the War on Terror. That necessitates 30 of these stands. And at Sturgis, they were very close together, and when you got in between them, it was like walking through a forest. It's an amazing thing when you put pictures of men, women, all nationalities, all ranks, including general, up there for you to see. And you know we've not seen the end of it. Very sobering. To deface any memorial, and especially a veterans memorial, is to forget how hard it is to maintain freedom. Most all veterans come out of the service with a great respect for the United States flag, the stars and stripes, no matter how many stars it had on it at the time they served. For veterans to see someone dishonor the flag is to dishonor all the millions of veterans, past and present, in active duty military. There are plenty of things that need to be changed as we grow as a nation. Be careful how you work for change. The United States is still the best nation in the world. Let's not tear it down. Remember, this nation was built on national courage and individual effort. Earlier, I made sort of a joke about the mask. Sometimes you need to laugh in tough times. The COVID, however, is not a joking matter. You are living in school years through a period of time that is very tough. It's a tough challenge. Except for exceptional acts of bravery, the military meets these challenges as a team, working through the challenge together. Be a little kinder, try a little harder, respect everyone, help each other. When you look back, it will be this teamwork that you remember. Finally, I'm so thankful for the assembly today, as it says more than words can say. We appreciate it. Thank you, and thank God you live in the United States of America.
Thank you, Mr. Byrne. Our second speaker served 4 years in the 115th Field Artillery Brigade Army National Guard. Please welcome Mrs. Lee, and again, hold any questions until the end.
Good morning. You guys mostly know me, right? I'm going to start off by saying that when I was asked last year to speak, I told Mrs. Shaddock no. And then when I was asked again this year, I said no. And then when I was asked again, I still said no. They're very persistent, which is a good quality to have. And finally I was like, fine, if you're not going to stop asking me, I won't do it. But then I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to talk about? Like, I had no idea. And I was like, what do you want me to talk about? They're like, just talk about your service. No big deal. I was like, okay. Well, I wasn't in for very long, and I never deployed. So I never got to go overseas. I mean, super fun stories to tell about when I was deployed, which is really what most of you probably want to hear. But then I thought about it, and I thought about it some more, and then I procrastinated, and then I stressed about it, and then I asked them to move the podium behind there so I didn't have to be up here, and then that worked. So I decided that I should probably get something to talk about. You guys probably know how that feels. Fine, I'm going to have to do it. I better do it, right? So, in response to what I did in the military, I worked in communications. I had to have a top secret clearance to do that, so you can't have any like with 115th Field Artillery Brigade with the Army National Guard in Cheyenne, Wyoming. I joined when I was in high school. And when I went to join, everyone said, don't sign anything. Don't sign anything until you have talked to someone. And I was like, okay. Well, I signed. And when I got back, they were like, we signed. We knew you were going to, but, so I signed while I was still sitting in my classroom. Like, I wasn't in my classroom physically at the time, but I was still going to school. I decided that that's what I wanted to do, and so I did it. I was 18 years old, and no one was going to tell me that I couldn't do what I wanted to do. So I did my basic at Fort Jackson in South Carolina, where basically they train you to be one unit. You are not an individual, you are a part of a big machine, and you have a job to do, and everyone is one person. Then I did my AIT in Fort Fordham, Georgia, where I got to learn more specialized, and I started to get to become a little bit more individual, but you're still part of the big machine. So part of my problem with wanting to come up here and talk with you, besides that, like I had a very short-lived career, was that I was actually an Army wife for longer than I was in the military. On November 5th, 2009, there was an attack on Fort Hood, Texas, which is where we happened to be stationed at the time. My husband was stationed there, and he was on post, and I could not get hold of him. That was scary. It was really scary. I couldn't get hold of him, but I had people from all over the world calling me to see if we were okay. And I couldn't give them that answer because I couldn't get a hold of the one person that could give me that answer. So even not being deployed, I still have that experience of like that fear. And those are my brothers and sisters in arms, even if we weren't deployed together. They're still part of my family. And there were 13 people killed, and that hurt really bad. People that I didn't personally know, but still, when someone attacks your home, it hurts. I can tell you a lot more stories about what it was to be a military wife, but I got to thinking about it, and I wasn't feeling like I was going to do justice to what it meant to be a veteran and how to show that respect to our veterans, those that have served and protected our country. So I thought a little bit more, and I finally thought, what would I really want to leave these people with? And Mr. Firm kind of touched on it. He talked about respect. And we see it everywhere in this school. We do a great job of like showing what that is, and like we see it right over here on the wall, 4 little words, respect. We see it in our classrooms, we hear it from our teachers, respect, respect, respect. And sometimes we might get a little sick of hearing it, right? But you could honestly probably call 100 people up here to talk to you about respect, and you get 100 different answers of what that might look like. So I thought I might talk to you about what it might look like to a veteran. We want to say thank you to our veterans, and we want to tell them thank you, and honestly, it's a lot of hard to receive that thanks. We want to talk to them, because how cool is it that they were a hero, and this is someone that we can look up to. And then we say thank you, and they're like, do I say thank you back, or do I say you're welcome? I'm not sure. But then we want to ask them some questions, right? Like, how cool is it to ask them some questions? They're going to give us some really cool answers. So I came up with a list of questions that might be respectful and appropriate for our veterans, especially during Veterans Day someplace, and then some not so appropriate ones. And I figured I would answer those questions as best as I can and explain why the ones that aren't so appropriate are a little bit more disrespectful. Number one, if you really want to respect a veteran, you can just ask them, why did you join the military? And I joined the military because that was in my family. My dad was a veteran, my grandpa was a veteran, all of my uncles were veterans, great-uncles were veterans. It was just in the blood of our family line. So like I was like, well, that's what they did, that's what I'm going to do. And that's the short answer. I wanted to protect our family or our country. And so I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to do. That's what my family showed me as an example of what it meant to be patriotic, and that's how I can thank those before me for joining. So I joined the military in 2004. Another question you can ask is, do you come from a military family? And I already answered that, right? Yeah, I come from a military family. I have a long line of people that are military veterans. Why did you choose the branch you chose? I went into an Army National Guard. There's Coast Guard, there's Marines, there's Air Force, there's Army, Marines, Air Force, Coast Guard, Army, and then all of our National Guards. I chose National Guard because I could continue to go to school and get an education while also serving our country. So I joined and I went to school and I served for our country. Another good question to ask was, what did you do in the Army, Navy, Marines, Coast Guard, right? And I've already answered that too. I worked in communications. These are questions that any veteran is going to be happy to answer for you. They'll be happy to say, oh yeah, that's what I did. How long did you serve? 4 years for me. When you join, you sign a contract, and it's usually 4 years, and you have a chance to re-up is what they call it. And you can choose how long you want to go. I ended mine at 4 years because I had been injured. Did you visit many countries? I did not. I was stuck here. Even when I was in the as a military, we were stuck here. It would have been really cool too, but I didn't get to go anywhere neat. Where's the favorite place you lived? My favorite place that I lived was actually Texas. I made a lot of friends there. We were there for quite a while. I really enjoyed my time there. It wasn't too cold. It got really hot though. I like this one actually because it kind of takes a little stress off of the veterans if you ask us. A funny story you experienced that could only happen in the military. So when I was in basic training, we had this one soldier who honestly was not getting it. She could not figure out for the life of her how to just do what she was asked. And usually, like I said back at the beginning, that you're in basic training, you are one unit. So if one person gets in trouble, everybody gets in trouble. Not this time. This poor girl. She was pulled out of formation, and I was called to be your battle buddy, because when you're in basic training, you don't go anywhere alone, because you are not an individual, you are a part of the team. So I was like, here we go again. And the soldier and the drill sergeants pull us aside, and they put me at parade rest, which is just, and they put her down on the floor, ready to smoke her, which is just as physical punishment. And she got smoked bad. And I'm not wanting to get in trouble, just look straight at me. As they're yelling at her for doing something wrong. And then she starts crying. And the drill sergeant got down on her level, and he goes, are you crying? Do you know what tears are to me? Tears are like blood, and I'm a great white shark. It took everything in me to not laugh at that. You guys can laugh, it's funny. I thought it was hilarious. I almost got smoked myself because my job was not to laugh at that, but it was hilarious. You're not going to hear that in the classroom. Another good question to ask a veteran is, how does your military experience affect your life today? And honestly, in the lines of respect, like, for me, it helped me learn hard work, respect, dedication. Didn't teach me how to say no very well. But all of those things carry over into real life situations. Even if like I said, my job is communications, I don't work that here. But just showing up, being on time, doing what you're told, those are big parts of success in life, and that was a big part of what the military teaches you. Now we've gone over some good, respectful questions. I'm going to ask a couple of disrespectful questions. and I'm going to do my best to answer them, but you should not ask a veteran these questions, and here's why. Asking a veteran these questions, it doesn't show them respect. It asks them about some of the most painful times of their life. Now, if you would close your eyes and think of the most painful time of your life, something you hurt you deeply, do you want people asking you about that? Probably not. Right? So, these are very personal, painful, uncomfortable questions that we should not be asking our veterans in an attempt to show them some respect. And this is the one we hear a lot. Have you ever killed someone? No, I have not. But can you imagine how that would feel if you had to have to remember that? Not very good. Do you agree with the president? Our jobs as military members was not to question the president. He was the boss. We don't get a say. So asking us if we agree or not does not help anyone. It's just uncomfortable. Is it hard to get back to real life after being in the military? For me, it wasn't. I was Army National Guard, so I was a civilian most of the time. But those that are active duty, they have a different experience than I do. I can't answer for them. But again, it can be very uncomfortable for them to have to answer that kind of question. How could you leave your family for so long? It's not easy. But you know what? Serving our country isn't easy, and it's a choice that they made. I personally didn't ever have to be home for that long. I had my husband deployed while I was pregnant, gave birth to a child with him not there. But I knew that that was a big part of what he had signed up for, and it's a big part of what we signed up for as military families. What's the worst thing that ever happened to you? Going back to your own personal experiences, you're young, probably don't have too much terrible things, but those of you that have had some bad things, do you want to talk about the worst experience of your life? Probably not. It's not terribly respectful. Have you ever been shot? My answer is yes, but not when I was in the military. I was at this camp. They didn't realize that the shots were going over the hill and hitting us down at the waterfront. Luckily, I wasn't close enough to actually be injured. But again, my story is completely different than someone that's been injured. And when we ask that question, I can say yes, and I can say it wasn't the military, but not everyone can. And it's hurtful, and it's painful, and it's personal. This last question is probably the hardest one for me to answer, because the answer is yes. Do you know anyone who died? Have you ever seen anyone die? Yes. And I don't know if you guys probably saw me up here tearing up, and she brought me some tissues. Because yes, I do know people that have died personally. I mentioned earlier that I was at the base that got shot up and 13 people died, and I didn't know those people. But I do have friends and I have family members that were overseas and were killed. And that's hurt. It hurts. Like I said, it's very painful. Even thinking about them being on the memorials and honoring them in that way, it's not fun. I'd much rather have my friends and my family standing up here next to me today and be able to give them a hug or a high five, or even from 6 feet away, wave to them and be like, hey, it's good to see you. I don't like talking about that. You wouldn't like talking about it. It's not very respectful to ask someone about it, right? So when we were talking to our veterans, it's best to talk to them in a way that you would want to be able to, even not being a veteran. They're our heroes. We love them. We appreciate everything they've done for us. Some of them had to sacrifice everything so that we could sit in this gymnasium today and honor them. And so I'd like to ask you today, yes, thank your vets. They're going to be on court of the defense. You're welcome. We don't know what to say. It's weird. But try to be respectful when you talk with them, because they have been hurt. even if they have that tough exterior, because their guys sometimes. I'm a little bit softer. I've had a little bit more time away from the military than some of these people. That's really what I have to say today. I appreciate you guys having me up here to talk, and thank you for your service, and thank you for your service, and everyone out there on YouTube, thank you for your service.
Thank you, Mrs. Cleve. Before we continue, does anyone have any questions for Mrs. Cleve or for Mr. Furlong? No? Okay, at this time, we would like to recognize any veterans that are in this room. So if you are a veteran, please stand to be recognized. Thank you all for your service. As Haxtun's National Honor Society Vice President, I would like to close today with a list of thank yous for everyone that helped make today possible. This assembly looked a little bit different this year, but we are so grateful to have you all here today in some way or another. We thank Mr. Steve Byrne and Mrs. Nicole Cleve with respect, honor, and gratitude for their service, as well as for making the time to share a little bit about themselves with all of us today. We would also like to thank Mrs. Seeger and her tech classes for all of their technical help. We would like to thank Mr. Knoll and Mrs. Garrettson for their unwavering support, as well as our custodians, Jerry and Stacy Wagner, for helping us have the gym and stage ready for today. Thank you to the Chamber of Commerce for supplying the gift that will be given to our speakers, and we would also like to thank Mr. Farquhar and the band for their wonderful performance, as well as the color guard for the posting of our colors this morning. Finally, we would like to recognize our outstanding National Honor Society members, our diligent advisor, Mrs. French, as well as the NHS Veterans Day Committee members, Kylie Workman, Cash Knapp, Allie Thompson, and Ella Coffin. Please stand to be recognized. I would like to close today with a quote from the 35th U.S. President, John F. Kennedy. As we express our gratitude, we must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter words, but to live by them. We will now have Mr. Farquhar play the text.